I'm Josie Sexton, and I'm a food journalist here in Denver. Been covering food and all things related for almost the last decade. Thank you so much for coming to our panel, our first panel this morning on the very sexy topic of food labels. We're here to make it very exciting for you. Panelists, can you introduce yourselves? All right.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Jerusha Klemperer, and I'm the director of a website called FoodPrint.org, and also the host of the FoodPrint podcast, What You're Eating. We're a consumer-facing website to help people understand where their food comes from.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Turner Wyatt, and I'm the CEO of the Upcycled Food Association.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ron Mardesen. I am a Niman Ranch farmer, mentor and spokesman for Niman Ranch. Niman Ranch is a niche meat company that is emphasizing sustainability, emphasizing care for the land, care for the farmer, welfare for the animal, and a fantabulous tasting meat. Oh, and by the way, I'm really excited about being on a panel that's sexy.
Okay, so the first question to get us kicked off that I wanted to ask you all is what labels mean to you in your respective positions? And I'm curious which labels you're most passionate about and which ones you maybe just do away with if you had the option.
Want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, so in my role at FoodPrint, or really less about me, more about the website, our job is to demystify things like labels for people. So it's a very full, complicated landscape, right? If you think about a carton of eggs that someone might find at the supermarket, as you know, there could be like 20 different terms, labels, certifications, whatever, all over. It's pretty noisy. And so we really see our job at FoodPrint is to give people the tools to decode and decipher what's on those packages. So to understand which labels have meaning and rigor, which labels are more just like claims that don't really have to be backed up, things to look for in a good way, things to look out for in a bad way. So we have a food label guide on our website that goes product by product and label by label that you might find out there, from the extremely hard to find and esoteric to the like very standard, what does USDA certified organic tell you about eggs, and really breaking down all the criteria if you want to get really deep down into it, giving our top level choices for like, this is your best bet if you care about these various issues. And so most importantly, we try to educate people that the best labels to look for are the ones that are third-party certified, that you can go to our website or to their website, whoever the label is, and see what the criteria is. And to look out for things that are more like claims. And specifically product by product, there might be claims that you see more than others, right? So if it's free range for eggs, to help people understand that there's actually there are no rules and regulations for putting free range on something, and for certain products it might not even make sense. It's like, none of them are in cages, like it doesn't matter. So we really try to break those things down and help people understand, whether it's in the food label guide or articles that we have or episodes of our podcast. So we're less interested in the labels like natural, less interested in like pictures of a farm and a happy cow than we are in third-party certification.
I can go next. So I don't know if I would get rid of any certifications or labels, because I kind of like them, because I think at their core, they're just about giving consumers more information. Just kind of what you were talking about, like if we can be more transparent and communicate to consumers what's actually inside of what they're putting inside of their bodies, I think that's a good thing. And I think one of the things that I care about is knowing about how much food waste I'm creating. And that's the certification that I'm most passionate about. It's the one that Upcycled Food Association created. It's called Upcycled Certified, and it helps consumers know that they're having an impact on food waste prevention when they're buying products. Why would you want to prevent food waste? Well, let's see. Raise your hand if you want to waste food in your life. So that tracks. That tracks because about 99% of people agree that food waste is bad. which is pretty remarkable. Where is there that alignment, that level of alignment on, especially for the thing that happens to be the #1 most effective solution to global warming according to Project Drawdown? You would think that 50 people, right down the middle, 50% of people agreed on that. But food waste is this ubiquitous thing. We all are taught that it's really bad, and we can reduce food waste in our own homes. We can go to the grocery store more often. We can donate our excess food. There's all kinds of ways that we can prevent food waste. And now with Upcycled Certified, we can prevent food waste every time we go into the grocery store. And with Upcycled Certified, it really helps consumers identify which are the products that they should choose, which are the ones that they should take off the shelf and put in their cart, or online, put in your cart on an e-commerce site if you want to prevent food waste. So I'm a big fan of certifications and food labels because I think it's really about transparency and consumer trust.
Wow, I love you already. Wow.
I love you too, sir.
You know, I guess to me I wish there was some way we could take a label and somehow magically transport us to the farm or plant us to where the product that's in the package was grown. Because I think that would be the best way to get the message across of what is in that package. That would get us a chance to visit with the person that produced that, get a sense of his feeling or her feeling, get a sense of the passion and the compassion that went into that. If we could do that, I think that would help a lot with the labels. Now, I am a firm believer in third-party certification. As you know, I work with Niman Ranch, and Niman Ranch does have a third-party certification on anything and everything that they do. I think it's tantamount, this is paramount to verification, the validation of what's on that label, and so we can be able to put the bang where the buck is and say this is what it is, and we can back that up. If I had a pet peeve about labeling today, I think my biggest one, and I think probably those in the room that know me would understand where this is coming from, is the phrase antibiotic-free. Now, I work with Niman Ranch, and Niman Ranch is a never-ever program. And folks, never-ever means never-ever. It's exactly what it says. When the label says that this animal or this meat product that you are getting was never fed antibiotics, it was never ever administered antibiotics, they mean that. When you pick up a package in the store, guys, and it says antibiotic free, that individual animal was free of antibiotic residue the day it was harvested. That's a big key, that's a big difference, and that's one thing that people do not understand. Folks, let me put it to you this way, and let me put it bluntly. 70% of all antibiotics used in the United States today go into food-grade animals that we eat. We need to do something about that. So we need to work on that. We need to emphasize, we need to clarify that difference in this antibiotic-free versus never-ever antibiotics.
I think that takes us towards the subject of misconceptions about food labels, and also the topic of greenwashing on food labels. And I would love to hear some more about this. You started addressing these issues. What are you most concerned about when it comes to what people are getting and what they're actually getting?
Can I go back and answer that first? Okay. There's a number of things that fall into the category, at least I feel fall into the category of greenwashing. The first and foremost one that comes to mind, obviously, I just touched on, is the antibiotics and the antibiotics misuse. Another one that I find genuinely frustrating and hard to get my head around are phrases that everybody likes to use. For instance, crate-free. We're all familiar with Proposition 12 and what's going on with Prop 12 now. That is a law in the books in California that has basically banned the use of gestation crates for pregnant female pigs during their pregnancy. Gestation crate, folks, is 2 foot wide and is 7 foot long. Now that seems tight, that seems cramped, but you take a 500 to 700 pound animal and put them in that crate, and that's horrible. They can't turn around, they can't interact with other animals. All they can do is stand up and lie down, and sometimes they don't even have enough room to lie down. And the industry today puts them in that from the time that they're taken away from their baby pigs until the time they have the next set of baby pigs. That's horrible, that's awful. But when you read a label on a package that says crate-free, you automatically go to your head thinking, oh, okay, they're not in that translucent crate. And that's all nice and fun. Well, guess what? That's not exactly what it says. They are gestation break free for a period of time. It is not uncommon to leave these female pigs out away from these confined crates for the first 2 or 3 weeks after they get impregnated. Then they're crammed into them. The way the code reads, the way the laws read now, if they at some point in their life are outside of that crate, then you can label that as crate free. That's one of my pet peeves. Another one that I have issues with is country of origin labeling, or maybe the lack thereof. The whole concept that we go in and we buy a piece of meat, I want to know where it came from. I don't want to have an indicated guess on where it came from. If it says, this was born in America, this was raised in America, this was harvested in America, I want to know that. If this was born in another country, was harvested in America, and then ultimately sold to me in America, that's fine, but I want to know that too. These are two things that I find really, really important. And one more thing, and I'll shut up, guys, I promise I will shut up. I have issues with the definition of or the understanding of humanely raised or free, ready, outside access. This is a great big gray area, and I bet if I would ask each and every one of you in this room, you give me a different answer. These are the things that we need to nail down, and these are the things that we need to address.
Sure. One thing I wanted to say is that to have a positive take on things, I think the reason that greenwashing exists and is so successful is because consumers have demonstrated that they care about these things, right? And so you look at something like Prop 12, when consumers are faced with a question like, would you like to have sows be crammed into tiny crates? Like, do you feel good about that and you want to buy that pork? They overwhelmingly said, oh God, no, like that sounds horrible. I wouldn't want that, Same thing with cage-free eggs that also happen in California. When presented with this option, do you think that hens should be crammed into tiny cages and not able to expand their wings and move around? People were horrified and they said no. The reason that greenwashing works and that it even exists is because consumers really, really care about these issues. They mostly don't know about them, right? Until maybe a proposition comes up or something like that. But they would choose humanely raised animals. They would choose fewer pesticides. They would choose all of these things. So just a positive shout out to the fact that the will is there and the market is moving in that direction, and that's why greenwashing even exists. Just wanted to flag, but I just wanted to flag that I think it's so tricky for people who want to do right, but this is not like their life's work, right? They're not a publisher of an animal magazine, or they don't work at some of the places that we do, but they sometimes need just little, okay, when it comes to eggs, I need to know there's one thing I'm going to look for, right? Okay, cage-free eggs, or I'm going to make sure I buy organic milk. Just I'm going to try to hit that most, some baseline marker that I know I'm doing something better for the environment, or for animals, or for my children, or our families, personal health. And so these labels really, some of these more greenwashing terms, I would say less labels, more terms and claims, they really take advantage of that shorthand that consumers are looking for, which is just quick little guideposts. I don't have all day to be researching every last thing. Go to the store and just make a quick choice that I can feel good about and know I'm making a slightly better choice. And that is what greenwashing is really taking advantage of, is that need for that quick shorthand.
Yeah, and what you already said is that really the most important thing when it comes to avoiding greenwashing is making sure that the claims that you care about are third-party verified. And I can tell you, as someone who's been involved with creating a third-party verified certification program, it's really hard. The process that goes into putting a label on a food product is really complex. And so I think if you can ensure that the certifications and the labels that you care about are verified by a third party, a disinterested auditor, then that should give you a little bit of confidence. And in fact, the two certifications that do influence consumers the most in terms of willingness to pay and purchase decision are organic, USDA organic, which is third-party verified, and non-GMO project verified, third-party verified certification program. So that's good. And those programs are doing a lot of good work, and they certainly increase people's willingness to pay for products, and they are third-party verified, so I don't think they're really greenwashing. And what I encourage consumers to do is, in your search to align your purchase decisions with your values, with your increasingly sustainability-oriented values, in addition to third-party verifications, you should look for what's the impact of those certifications and verifications. Because as someone who's been working in the food industry for a long time, I don't know that I could tell you what impact is happening in the world as a result of a Project Non-GMO verified product. Like, what impact am I creating when I choose organic milk over something else? And I'm not saying that there's no impact. I'm just saying that we should be thinking about what is the impact and what is being created out there in the real world if I choose this product over this other product. And again, I think that's one reason that food waste is a really potent area for us to look to as consumers to align our purchase decisions with our values, because there's a very discrete, very quantitative impact, an environmental outcome that's being created. And when you choose an upcycled certified product, for example, you're creating an outcome that otherwise would not have existed. There's a quantity of pounds of food waste that are being prevented that otherwise would not have been. And so what we're able to do with Upcycled Certified is something really interesting, is provide to consumers a number. And that number right now is about 925 million, which is the number of pounds of food waste that are being prevented every year by the 250 or so, still very small, 250 or so products that are currently Upcycled Certified. So every year, those products are preventing 925 million pounds of food waste, which has a CO2 emissions prevention number of in the billions, more than 2 billion. And when you look at the fact that upcycled products are also growing, sales of upcycled products are also growing by over 1,000% year over year, according to Spins, then the number of pounds of food waste that we're preventing really increases. And so to circle back around, third-party verifications are really important, but what's even more important is the outcome, the environmental impact that they're creating.
Turner, you started to speak about the process of achieving certification and how complicated that can be. And I'd just love to hear, because we have three very different perspectives or viewpoints on either monitoring certifications, achieving them, getting your products certified. So I'd love to hear about some of the obstacles and some of the roadblocks along the way.
Sure, so I'll very briefly, because this process took 3 years to create Upcycled Certified, and it started by answering the question, what is upcycled food? Which, funny enough, involved answering the question in an academic setting, what is food? So first we had to define what is food, which luckily WRI had already done that, and then we partnered up with World Wildlife Fund and Harvard Law School and NRDC and some other groups, and we defined upcycled food in a formal setting. And basically what it means is that it has an auditable supply chain, and it prevents food waste, and it has a net positive impact on the environment. Then we took that definition and we created a certification, or a certification standard, I should say, which is the 30-page, riveting, epic novella of a academic document that ultimately a third-party certifier uses to determine whether a product meets that standard or not. And the standard was created, again, by a group of volunteers who came together from all around the world to create this document, and then it's iterated on every year. So in terms of the way that we can all impact these things is we have a standards committee that anyone can join. Any of you could join the standards committee and help to iterate the Upcycled Certified standard. And most standards and certifications have a committee that updates and iterates on the standard every year, like USDA Organic Council. I forget what the name of it, but you can join that one too and have an impact on what outcome, what impact is actually being created by these really impactful certifications that are impacting billions of people around the world. Very arduous, very complex, but ultimately I think it's going to help prevent a lot of food waste, which is a critical part of avoiding global warming.
Thanks. Would either of you like to address the issue of achieving certification, or?
Oh, indeed I would. You know me. I'm not going to let it go untouched. I sell into Niman Ranch, and those of you know that Niman Ranch is a brand based on quality, based on integrity, and I'm proud to say, coming on based on longevity. The beauty of Niman Ranch is that we have got in place a system of folks that work within the company. We call them field agents that help our individual farmers develop their plans, help improve their plans, and by the same time help enforce the plans. Niman Ranch, as we know, is a never-ever program. It's based on preservation of the land, it's based on preservation of small family farms, it's based on the welfare of the animal, and it's based on the finest tasting meat in the world. These field agents visit these farms several times a year to make sure that all the standards, all the protocols, and everything that Niman Ranch is so proud of are enforced and supported. The beauty and the uniqueness about that is the same staff that goes out to help them enforce these protocols, also becomes very tight-knit and very close with the individual farmers. And this cohesion is just one more step that benefits and helps builds the strength of that brand.
I'll just say quickly that I think that kind of like the final step is a step that doesn't happen at the certification level. It's the making sure that people know what these certifications and labels are, and just that is what FoodPrint tries to do. So when new labels emerge, we try to highlight them, add them to our food label guide, make sure that people know what they are so they're not just getting lost in the sort of visual sea of what they might see at the farmer's market or grocery store. And so that means, like in our podcast episode on food waste, talked about upcycled foods and the certification, and chatted with someone who runs an upcycled food company. It means that when like regenerative labels start to become available, we talk about it on the podcast, write about it, add them to the food label guide. Because as these labels become available, if nobody understands what they are or that they exist, then you're missing that final piece of the chain.
So let's talk more about regenerative as a case study maybe of an emerging label in the space. Can you speak to that, what's going on there and what your experience with it is?
Well, I think it's so interesting because I think people inside the world of livestock production done in the right way are just like, oh, regen this, regen that. Yeah, regenerative, it's the new buzzword. But I think like the average person on the street has no idea what that is, what you're talking about. And so we definitely see our job at FoodPrint is to break it down and like explain every time we use that word or talk about it, like this is what this is what it aims to be. And I think it's a really interesting new label. In this, it reminds me of organic way back when, right? So it's like something with extremely, like goals with a lot of integrity and extremely robust ideal and potential. And I think that, it harkens back to greenwashing, but I think already a lot of the very big industrial companies have like stars in their eyes about it, and are like, oh yes, we are going to be regenerative as well. Yes, that's what we're doing. And I think it really requires digging a little deeper and paying attention to the companies and producers who are doing it with the full integrity of what regenerative is supposed to mean. And it'll be interesting to see over time if it becomes something like the organic standard, which is like very good, but maybe not what the original organic producers from 30 years ago hoped and dreamed, the label would be. But I bet you have lots of very interesting things to say about regen from the inside.
Maybe. I think the thing that I see now, and maybe folks can correct me on this, but that very word, regenerative, is up for interpretation and up for discussion. And it depends on the audience that you're talking to, how they interpret that and explain that. If you're talking to a group of larger producers, let's say the big guys, the meat companies, when they talk about regenerative, they shift it a little bit to pinpoint efficiencies. That's how they grasp this. I'm using less water to do X. We're using less electricity to do X. Because of the way we're doing things, it takes less feed to do X. You know, we can put more animals in X amount of space. This list goes on and on and on. You can see that. And they transfer that into efficiency, and that's okay. But then I want to turn around and I want to transfer that into resiliency. Now, what do I mean by resiliency? At Niman Ranch, we aren't the most efficient at feeding our pigs. The genetics we choose take a little longer, so they take a little more feed. But it's more than compromised, and it's more than offset in the taste. We're about protecting the farm, we're about protecting the farmer, we're about maintaining the integrity of the land, we're about the welfare of the animal. I have one more comment about that, and then I'll get off my soapbox here. But remember back when COVID first started, and everything was shut down, everything stopped. Big Ag stubbed their toe. We found out how fragile they were and how fragile they could be. We heard in the news, we saw in the media that folks that had chickens or folks that had pigs that needed to have them harvested on a regular basis for whatever reason, whether it was transportation or the actual harvest house itself, could not get these animals harvested. We heard horror stories about animals having to be euthanized because there was no way to get them where they needed to be. Well, ladies and gentlemen, because of the resiliency of companies like Niman Ranch, who were small enough and flexible enough to make this work, the harvest plants kept running. My farm, my daily operation through that whole time was not adulterated, affected, or modified in one way. And folks, to me, when I think of efficiencies, when I think of resiliencies, and I think of regenerative practices, that's a great way to start.
Trina, do you have anything? Okay. I'm curious how many of you in the audience, speaking of who our audience is, could come up with a definition for regenerative if you were asked, maybe within a few seconds, with show of hands. Nice. Can we speak a little bit more about meat sourcing, eating, sustainability, and some certifications and labels that you see as integral in the future of meat production and meat eating?
Well, Upcycled Certified does certify some meat products, which, speaking back to the last question, that means we had to work with the USDA, probably your best friends, to make sure that we could get the Upcycled Certified label on meat products. And something that I've noticed, and I don't have any research to back this up or data, but something that I think just culturally exists, and maybe you can back me up or correct me, is that in the meat industry, I think there's actually a lot that we can learn from, in the food waste movement, from the meat industry, because there's kind of this notion of everything but the squeal, tip to tail mentality, like everything gets used. And we sort of like that notion of, yeah, everything gets used, and we'll make broth out of the bones, and we're going to be thrifty and upcycle everything into some new product, and not let anything go to waste, because I think that's just kind of how humans are programmed. And why isn't that the case with the rest of the food industry? We let 30%, 40% of food go to waste. If there was 30 to 40% of an animal going to waste just habitually, systematically, I think we would say, that seems sort of immoral and wrong. And the fact is that it's just as bad in terms of the environment, the global environment, when it comes to wasting any type of food. And so especially with meat, because there's more energy that goes into the production of meat, it's very important that we don't waste any of that. And coincidentally, the meat industry has been pretty good at preventing waste. And so now it's time to use that philosophy of just using all of the food, 100% usage. If we have a billion tons of food under till, then let's use all of it. And so maybe that's something that we can learn from the meat industry.
Temple Grandin said it best, animals deserve our respect. Think about it. They are making the ultimate sacrifice for us. When you go to the store, when you go to the butcher shop, wherever you go to, don't be afraid to ask the question. I mean, yeah, I know they're limited. They've only got a certain amount of time they can do that. But take the time to find the answers you want. The name of the game in the meat industry should be transparency. You should have the right to know exactly how that animal was raised. You should have the right to know exactly how that animal was cared for. And ultimately, you should have the right to know exactly how that animal was harvested. Third-party verification is tantamount, in my opinion, on that. We are lucky enough that we are certified humane. Niman is the largest North American meat company that has all three of their protein species certified humane with the label. That's huge. We do our own in-house auditing. We do have the third-party auditing done. But I encourage consumers just like you, or just like people you work with, to come out to the farm, to see the way they're raised, to see how I do it. And I encourage you to ask questions, because at the end of the day, you're the one that vote with your dollar, and at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to throw that steak on the grill. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to research. Transparency is what we need.
I'll just say that I think meat at the supermarket is the hardest one for people. I think there are not a lot of great options. And I think one of the amazing things about Niman scaling in the way that it has is that that is something that that more and more people can find at the supermarket. Certified Humane is a wonderful label. You can read about it in our guide, and I think that's one that turns up more and more at the supermarket. But, you know, I live in a big city, in a place where you can find a lot of organic produce available at the supermarket, a lot of organic canned goods, but the meat section is really sad at my local supermarket, and I have trouble finding anything there that I would feel good about. I think we know that the USDA organic label, when it comes to livestock, is, you know, they're working out some stuff right now as we speak, because it doesn't tell you as much as we would like for it to. You know, it tells you that the feed was organically raised, but in terms of if you're looking for animal welfare and things like that, there's really not that much rigor to it at the moment. And that's probably the most, you know, if a person went to Whole Foods even, like, the options at Whole Foods, meat-wise, pretty limited. So I think meat is a really hard one, and one where consumers feel really stuck. Probably the meat pages on our food label guide are the most visited ones in the whole guide. Beef, for sure. People just like, what am I supposed to buy when it comes to beef? So I'm really excited about companies being able to scale, because I think, you know, as much as it's great for me that I can go to the farmer's market and speak, you know, directly with farmers and find out how that meat was raised, for so many people in this country, the supermarket is the only place that they have to go. And so the more we can have better meat with good third-party certification, be able to scale in some way, I think is absolutely integral to this working.
Okay, with just a minute left or so, if you have any recommendations for labels that people should be on the lookout for certifications that are coming down the pike, or anything that people can go off from here and go research themselves further that you think is really exciting, please feel free to share.
What is yours?
Mine's Upcycled certified,
Oh, okay.
which you can find on our website, upcycledfood.org, and you can find in pretty much any grocery store now, and we're growing the number of products, and the most centralized place is our website, though. So.
I guess I would say that if you're looking for a product and you want to look on the label, look at the depth, look at the content of the label. I mean, in our case, we're all about supporting the farm. We're all about supporting the farmer. We're all about the welfare of the animal. We're all about the quality of the meat. Look at a label and see if that label is willing to do that, or is willing to put their attention and effort into something like that. And ultimately look at that label and ask yourself, is this what I want? Is this what I'm after? Do I want to support this? And go from there.
In the FoodPrint food label guide, there is one label that comes out on top almost all the time, which is animal welfare approved from a greener world. It's at this point, it's hard for a lot of consumers to find that label, but we like to just let people know this is probably the one you'll find with the most rigor. And some of the new regenerative labels as well have, they're very robust and have a ton of integrity. So it'll be interesting and exciting to see if these labels can continue to grow. I think in terms of what people can find at the store, I mentioned, I think Certified Humane is a label with a lot of rigor. And for most people, when they go to the store, the organic label is going to be the best thing that they can find, and it still has a lot of good wrapped up in it, and so they should grab that when they can.
Thank you all so much.